Hi, grade 7 students. I am Mrs. Scott, and today I'm going to teach you about something that you see in your everyday lives, which is graphs. But before we can explore graphs, we need to know what a graph is. So, a graph is a picture that tells us a story about numbers. This story tells us the relationship between these two things, and it helps us identify patterns between these things. These things are called variables. Lesson objectives. In this lesson, we will mainly focus on line graphs. By the end of this lesson, learners will be able to understand what a graph is showing us. In other words, interpreting graphs. They will also be able to identify trends such as increasing, decreasing, and constant, and they will draw their own graphs from information or real life situations. Let's take a look at our first example of a graph. I want you to look at the three things that every graph needs to have, which is an x-axis, a y-axis, and a title. So the x-axis is our horizontal line at the bottom. This is normally our independent variable, or we can say it's a variable that we choose to change. Then the y-axis is circled in red. That is our vertical line. Okay, and that is normally our dependent variable, which means that variable depends on our independent variable. Then it's circled in pink is where our title normally will be. This title is example of the linear graph. Okay. Then I want you to look at the blue line on the graph. This is an example of a linear graph. This means that the graph is in the shape of a line. This is an example of a nonlinear graph. As the previous graph, which was the linear graph, this graph also has an x-axis, y-axis, and a heading. The only thing that is different is that the points that is plotted on the graph doesn't run in the shape of a line. It goes higher, or it can go lower, or it can stay constant. Always remember to indicate in what your x-axis and y-axis is measured in. For example, time is measured in seconds and distance is measured in meters. This graph shows us the distance that is traveled by a runner over time. The x-axis is time in minutes and the y-axis is distance in kilometers. From minute 0 to 10, the line is steep. This means the line is increasing, which shows us that the runner is running fast and covers a lot of distance. From minutes 10 to 15, the line is constant, which means it's flat. This indicates to us that the runner is resting. From minutes 15 to 30, the line is increasing again, but it is not increasing as steeply as from minutes 0 to 10. This shows us that the runner is picking up his pace, but is not as fast as he was in the beginning. This also shows us that he is maybe jogging and is not covering the same amount of distance that he did as in minutes 0 to 10. Now we are going to draw a graph together. Example description. So this is the information that we are given. At 6 a.m., the temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. By midday, it rises to 25 degrees. At 6 p.m., it drops to 18 degrees. At midnight, it's 16 degrees. The first thing we're going to do is draw our x-axis and our y-axis and label it. In this situation, our time of the day is our x-axis because it is the independent variable, the variable that we control, and the y-axis is our temperature. You can insert a title of your choice. Now we are going to use the plot they give us to determine what our x-axis and y-axis, what numbers we will use. Please make use of a ruler. I apologize, I did not make use of a ruler. So we are going to label the x-axis with the time of day that they provided us, which is 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and 12 a.m. Then we are going to look at the temperatures of the day and we are going to count in tens. So we are going to label our y-axis 10, 20, and 30. After labeling or numbering our x and y axis, now we are going to plot the points that they gave us. Let's look at our graph. From 6 a.m. to 12 p.m., the temperature rises. From 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., it decreases and then it decreases further in the middle of the night. That graph tells us a story about the temperature occurrence during the day and night. Take a look at the graph we drew together. Do you think this graph is linear or non-linear? And discuss why you think so. You can do this in small groups. Your teacher can pause the video or you can pause the video and discuss whether or not you think the graph is linear or non-linear. In this educational video, we have learned about graphs, what graphs is, how we draw graphs, how to interpret and read graphs. But the question I know we are all wondering is, why do I need to know this information? Why do I learn graphs? The reason we learn graphs is because it is used in our everyday lives. Have you ever driven a taxi or in a taxi before? I know I did. And I wondered, well, how does this taxi driver knows what distance to cover in which amount of time? Because they need to pick some people up by a certain time. They use time versus distance graphs. The weather report, people who read weather, they use weather versus time reports. And scientists use graphs to track their experiments. Therefore, graphs is actually a really important thing in our everyday lives. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.